as I said, from all of us at the Valley Council for Health and Human Services, we're deeply committed to reimagining the composition of our membership. Those most affected by the issues being meaningfully involved in the decisions that affect their lives amongst themselves and their neighbors, and the communities that they live in. And I am really excited to introduce a couple of all-in residents in Ansonia and Oxford. Number one, Stephanie, who was recently, we came together, many residents from the Valley communities came together just a few weeks ago, where we did a story circle with elected officials and residents from all walks of life. And Stephanie was at the table and shared, as I explained earlier, the story of self, and to hear everyone around the table, the story of us. And then that sense of urgency in the story of now on how we can write the next chapter together. And it takes a lot of courage for people to come on the screen and to speak to more than 60 people in a Zoom format. So Stephanie and Sarah, we so appreciate you carving out this time to speak from the heart. And again, stories are instruction to the heart. So it's my honor to introduce first Stephanie, an Ansonia resident, as part of our Valley region, followed by Sarah, an Oxford resident. And so I will now turn it over to you, Stephanie, as I put on the speaker view, please.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to say on November 4th, I sat in a room full of people that I did not know. I was nervous, scared, and I'll admit a little embarrassed about what I plan to share. I couldn't afford to heat my house, pay my mortgage, and feed my family. The help we were being given was very appreciated, but more was desperately needed. To people like me and so many people I know, this was obvious. I had talked about it before, mostly to friends and family, but that day I was going to have to say it in front of strangers, including a United States representative. I sat anxiously waiting and I didn't know what to expect. But when Rosa DeLauro walked in the leather jacket and rings on every finger and purple hair, which is my favorite color, I felt a bit at ease. Um, I spoke about how when I was a child, I'd almost die of asthma from the heat in the summer, and I'd almost die of asthma from the cold in the winter. And I spoke about the reality of my daughter being recently diagnosed with asthma. I spoke about how hard I worked to ensure that my children didn't suffer the same way that I did. Several of my neighbors spoke along with me that day. We spoke about having to make the difficult decision to decide whether or not we wanted to pay for our mortgage or pay for our gas. Decisions that affected more people than I even recognized. The way Rosa was so attentive and listened to my words and her response, it was like I was not speaking to a stranger or a Sue, as they say. It was more like speaking to a friend. I needed her and the other officials in the room to know that while help for each issue is being worked on and distributed individually, we, the people, the residents, we're experiencing these struggles simultaneously. All the issues affect each other in a way that the service programs often don't account for. And that day I knew that I was being heard. Rosa and the others became aware of realities they previously didn't understand. And I don't feel that this realization would have been possible if not for people like myself, my neighbors, just people like us having a seat at the table with those in higher places to let our experiences be known, to be explained, and to be heard, but more importantly, to be felt. Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. You're certainly bringing it home as far as the road that we've been embarking on with the Valley Council. And now I'd like to ask another fellow Valley resident, Sarah Locke of Oxford, to please share her perspective.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it. We've been talking a lot today on and off about having a seat at the table. And there's a funny line that I've heard over and over is, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're most likely on the menu. And that feels very true. But in the disability community, it feels somewhat different, because if people with disabilities don't have a seat at the table, they're much more likely to be collateral damage. As people strive together and try to craft a solution to help the most number of people, the people on the edges get left out, and oftentimes harmed by the same solutions that are working in the benefit of other community members. So I am a parent of 3 amazing young adult children, all of whom have disabilities. And I've been asked to have a seat at many different tables and play different roles. But today I'd like to tell you about when it comes to autism, which affects one of my children. The seat at the table I was asked to take was to bring information about autism to the law enforcement community and other first responders. And it was Chief Ortiz of New Haven, who was very forward thinking and asked us to come and speak to his officers about what autism looks like and how best to respond. And it was an amazing experience. Not everybody participated. I could tell that many of the officers were there just to check the box. Yes, I attended special populations training. Yes, I met the criteria. I spent the time, but others were really listening. And it turned out that I was learning about them as well. So as I became more authentic in my ability to share what it's like to be a family affected by autism and what it's like for my children who have autism, they began to relate more to what I was able to share with them. And so people would come to me after the breaks or at the end of the training and say, wow, that was really helpful. I wish I had known that last week before I went on this call. Or, wow, all the time you talked, I couldn't stop thinking about this person in the community. And now I think I can help them much better than I was able to before. Those words meant the world to me, because the people that they encounter could just as easily be the people that I love and care about. So as this magic was happening and we were crafting solutions together, an interesting thing happened to me. I no longer looked at the police officers as an other, as a they, as someone that in most of the time in the autism community that we fear, but instead as fellow human beings who are striving for some of the same things we are and striving to help their communities. So in many ways, I started out as an ambassador from the disability community to the police. But in the end, I became somewhat of an ambassador from the police to the communities that they look to serve and protect. So it's a two-way street. I encourage all of you to bring your stakeholders to the table, and not just to check the box, but to really hear what they have to say, to listen to what they experience and the solutions that they propose, because they bring their life experience to it. And that's a piece of information that you are missing when you craft solutions. So thank you so much for all that you do. And please keep the disability community in mind as you craft your solutions.
Sarah, Stephanie, thank you so much. You know, you remind us as a Valley Council on this path we've been on, having residents at the table helps us do our jobs better. And there's no trade-off between involvement and efficiency. And involvement of the people being helped in these decisions is about how to help them help us allocate our resources, which are so limited as a Valley Council, how to allocate those resources so much more effectively. So from all of us on behalf of the Valley Council for Health and Human Services, thank you so much for carving this time out to share. And we strongly believe that this is only the very beginning of something special as we reimagine the composition of our Valley Council. Thank you.